You know, sometime my ignorance absolutely appalls me. It really does. I've never heard of this man before. His name is Simon Wincer. Have you ever heard of it? Have you ever heard of the name Phar Lap? P-H-A-R-L-A-P. I'd never heard of the name. Didn't mean anything. Your name didn't mean anything to me. Phar Lap didn't mean anything to me. If you were an adult back in the 30s, the early 30s, 1932, you probably would have heard of a racehorse by the name of Phar Lap, a racehorse that came from Australia. This man has directed a film called Phar Lap that is, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful film, Mr. Wincer.
Simon, please.
So, we're going to get intimate here. I have a feeling we are, because you know what he put me in mind of? And I don't mean to compare the film with Chariots of Fire, but that feeling, I guess the human feeling when they were racing, like the horses were racing, the feel of the movement of the flesh, the slow motion, the photography, the cinematography, that feeling, that build-up, that swell of emotion.
Everybody said that it's compares with Chariots of Fire. And
they've said that?
Yes, and I don't take that as anything but a compliment, because after all that won the Academy Award for Best Picture a couple of years ago, and I guess because it's the film is set in a similar period, and the same sort of rich tapestry of emotions and characters, and also the fact that it is a story, a sporting story to some extent.
You know, there was a little old lady, I would say in her late 70s, that came out of the film last night, and she said, "All films ought to be like that. That was a magnificent film." And I turned to her and I said, what do you mean? She said, "I saw Phar Lap run. I saw the real Phar Lap run." She said the Olympics were being held in Mexico, down in 1932, and she said, "I saw him run." She said he was a magnificent horse. Now, maybe it took someone of that age to really be familiar. Now, what age are you?
I'm 40.
You're 40?
Yeah.
All right. Did you know about Phar Lap?
Yes, because in Australia, where we made the film, he's a national institution, and I remember as a very little boy going into the museum where the hide of the horse is on display, and my father, you know, holding my father's hand and gazing up at this huge, big horse, because he's a very big horse, in the glass case of the museum in Melbourne.
I mean, they've stuffed him?
Yep. He was stuffed in America after he died, and he's beautifully preserved, and there he is on display in the museum, because he, in Australia during the Depression, when he was a champion, he became an icon to the working class, you know, a symbol of hope, because he was such a winner in those depressed times. And of course he was sent to America to beat the best in the world, which he subsequently did under the most extraordinary circumstances, and we won't go into that because they'll find that out when they see the film.
Where did you find a horse that looked like Phar Lap?
Well, it was a matter, first of all, of advertising, and our horse master, Heath Harris, he looked all over Australia, high and low, and followed up a few leads, and after a very frustrating period of 2 months and not getting anywhere and finding a couple that would have been just acceptable, he was driving back to his property in northern New South Wales, and lo and behold, 20 miles down the road from his place, there was this magnificent horse, a spitting image of Phar Lap, standing in the paddock. So he drove straight into the farmhouse and asked the people if he could buy the horse, and they said yes, and that's the horse which played Phar Lap, a horse called Towering Inferno.
But was this a racehorse? Was Towering
Inferno? No, he wasn't actually a racehorse. He'd never raced, although he was a thoroughbred. He was actually a show jumping horse, and the thing we had to find about Phar Lap, we had to find an intelligent horse, because he had to learn to do so many particular things in the film. Secondly, he had to look like Phar Lap, and Phar Lap for a racehorse was huge. He was 17 hands. And thirdly, he had to have a character, a personality, which the real Phar Lap had, and so you couldn't just accept any horse. And
I was thinking about when we saw all the races, you had to choreograph the races.
We did,
if you're working with a horse that really wasn't a racehorse, and probably the other horses were, you'd have to hold the other horses back.
No, what we did, a lot of people have asked me this. One of the things that I was adamant about in making the film, because I've seen many horse racing films where the hero horse goes galloping past and all the jockeys are standing up in their stirrups holding the other horses so the champion can run past. And I said to our racing advisor and jockey coordinator, who's a champion Australian jockey called Roy Higgins, I said, Roy, there's one thing I want in this film, and he totally agreed with me. I said, in every shot I want the horses to be going flat out, and Phar Lap's got to run past them going flat out. So when they selected the team of racing horses, which we had for the rest of the, to provide the other horses in the film, we graded them. And every horse had a number on his hoof, from 1 to 35. And they were graded in order of their ability. So in any race, if we picked a particular field of horses and you mix the colours and things with the different races, and if we picked horse 2, 4, 6, 12, 14 and 18, then that's always the order they'd finish in. Because after all, we weren't running 2-mile races all in one shot. We'd break the races up into a variety of shots and that sort of thing.
You know, I noticed once that the horses seem to be going clockwise.
Yes, well, in Australia they race, in New South Wales, where Sydney is, they race clockwise, and in Melbourne they race anti-clockwise, as they do here. And so, of course, we had to be faithful to that, because the public would never have forgiven it.
Well, it was so curious, because I thought the horses are going the wrong way. Yeah. And who decided originally that horses should go counterclockwise the way we do? Who made that decision?
I have no idea.
Do you drive on the left or the right-hand side of the road in Australia?
We drive on the opposite side of here.
No.
We drive on the left.
Somebody's making these decisions up there.
Yes, they are. Yeah. I wonder who it is.
Why is it? Look at the successful Australian films that have come. There's been a rash of them recently. My Brilliant Career, Breaker Morant, Gallipoli. If you saw Town Like Alice on PBS,
yes.
A Man from Snowy River.
Yeah.
These extraordinarily fine films that are currently coming out of Australia. What's going on over there? What are you guys up to, huh?
Well, I think first of all, we've learnt the lesson that the things which sell to the rest of the world best of all are films that are uniquely Australian, about ourselves, therefore they have a fascination value, and yet their themes have a universal appeal. In other words, we're not trying to compete with Hollywood, and because after all they've been making films for 50 years and they're very good at making particularly slick, glossy, if you like, high-tech films, and we can't compete on that sort of level. But I think we've found a niche in that our country has a very colourful past, and not a lot has been known about it, and we've sort of lived under the umbrella of Great Britain, which Canada, I guess, has done to a lesser extent. But in our case, I think it's being a growing process, and with the coming of television in the mid-50s, and slowly a commercial production industry started, and we started making films for television, and eventually we won our own Australian audiences, and they liked Australian programs best of all. It was just a matter of, I guess, eventually of spreading our wings. Plus the government introduced taxation incentives to encourage the growth of the industry and help hopefully spread the Australian culture. And I think it's not only films, but it's been, pop music with groups like Men at Work and the Little River Band, and Air Supply and Olivia Newton-John and the Bee Gees, and it's all had a sort of cumulative effect over the years.
Well, there's a similar look, though, Simon. It's a muted, almost like a gauzy haze, somehow, in the beautiful colors. I noticed that in this film, too.
Yes, well, I suppose...
Soft, real soft look.
Well, if you compare Phar Lap and The Man from Snowy River, I was the executive producer on The Man from Snowy River, and one of my very best friends directed that film, and we've sort of grown up together as directors, and I suppose those two films have a similar look in that our styles and the way we work are very similar. In terms of other Australian films, we've also got very fine cinematographers, and a lot of whom have made their mark over here now. Men like Russell Boyd and Don McAlpine and John Seal, all at the moment are working in the US.
Well, it's a gorgeous film. One last thing, Simon. How do you, as an Australian film producer, get it marketed in the United States? What is the process that you have to go through to get someone like 20th Century Fox to handle your film and distribute it here?
Well, basically, the first thing you have to have is you have to have a good film, because it is very hard to get distribution in this market, because it's a parochial market, and the major studios like 20th Century Fox are interested in product that is going to have very broad appeal, because it involves a lot of money releasing a film across America. So that's the first thing, to get a distributor, and then the next thing, when you have a distributor like Fox, I guess the idea is to somehow promote and publicise the film so that people know that Phar Lap, for example, isn't a village in Vietnam, but it's a story about a horse, and that's really what this sort of thing is all about.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you did that film. When Phar Lap ran and won the first race in the movie last night, the audience applauded.
Yes,
the audience applauded in a movie theater that the horse had won.
Yes, that happens at every screening.
Oh, may I shake your hand? You have done a wonderful film.
Thank you very much.
And you're going to hear more about Simon Wincer in the future, and I know you're going to hear about Phar Lap, P-H-A-R-L-A-P. Please go see it. It's a wonderful film. Stay tuned. 10/11 Morning continues.